Hello pandas and other scrap enthusiasts. Today we are smashing a Cybertruck. Not literally, I don't have one. I live off chicken fried rice and bean tacos. So, it's more of a thought experiment. But everybody's been sharing this thing and talking about it, and it's polarizing, but love it or hate it, it has a very unique design. And I, in my scrapper's mind, I just can't help but look at things and wonder what they're worth when recycled down to their bare components. And look at this piece of engineering. There's something special going on here, even if it doesn't look like something you'd want in your driveway. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to dig into it and see just what is it built out of and how much would we get when one of these inevitably smashes into something and gets written off. So I went down the rabbit hole. I did the math. I watched a ton of videos, everything I could find on this thing, the old stuff and the current information, to determine exactly what these things are made out of and how much that's going to be worth in scrap. See, this truck is not constructed like most vehicles these days are. It's constructed the same as other Teslas in that instead of being a chassis on a frame and then a skin wrapped around that, it's a unibody. The frame and the chassis are just three different components stuck together, just three solid pieces, and then all of that is wrapped with a stainless steel exoskeleton. And this is done to save on weight because being an electric vehicle, they need to reduce the weight as much as possible to increase the total range. However, that doesn't make it light. It's almost 7,000 pounds for one of these things. That's like twice as much as my Ford Ranger, which is not a heavy truck by any means, but the Cybertruck is. And that's why I think the construction's so interesting. We'll get into that. There was a lot of surprises, and I wasn't a fan, but they got some pretty neat technology and engineering that went into this thing, and I gotta say, I am impressed. Now, the first thing to look at is the most obvious, the part that really stands out, that bright, shiny, uncoated stainless steel exoskeleton. So, my first port of call is I went to an AI chatbot, ChatGPT, and asked it, how much does the Cybertruck exoskeleton weigh? And it was less than helpful. So instead I found a website where I could upload the diagrams of the thing and plot out the dimensions with a custom scale. And I did that and came up with a bunch of different figures. And keeping in mind these figures are just estimations, I came up with some numbers for the total surface area of this exoskeleton. Now, we're calculating this as 304 stainless steel. That is the typical stainless steel. Now, allegedly, this was a special custom blend of stainless steel developed by Tesla and dubbed 30X series. Okay, Elon. Elon, okay. Okay, Elon. What's the secret ingredient, huh? A dash of cinnamon, maybe? I have done a deep dive on stainless steel before, and this is... I'm not saying there's no room for customization, but what it's formulated with is pretty much known. Maybe, I don't know, did he a little tungsten or something? Probably not. So we're calling it 304 because that is what the scrapyard would pay us for it. Now, in addition, it was originally suggested it was going to be 3 millimeters thick. That's very thick. I think I can come up with an example around here. But thankfully, they rolled that back because they learned, surprise, it wasn't totally necessary to have the entire truck skinned with 3 millimeter stainless steel. So, it's up to 1.8 millimeter stainless steel. And after digging into it a little bit, I discovered that it's just the two door outers that are 1.8 millimeter thick, and the rest of the stainless steel is 1.4 millimeters thick. So, in addition to that, it's mostly just what you see, but there are inner door skins, door inners as well. So, the total surface area for 1.8 millimeter stainless steel is 40,955 centimeters squared, and then 117,004 centimeters squared of 1.4 millimeter stainless steel. So we've got a total surface area, and now I needed a mass. So to figure that out, I cut this out. This is a 2 centimeters square of 1.4 millimeter stainless steel. So I weighed this, and it turns out 1.4 millimeter stainless steel weighs 2.4 grams per centimeter squared. Now, if we take that, divide it by 7, and multiply it by 9, we get 3.1 grams per centimeter squared of 1.8 millimeter stainless steel. Now, all of that, which to say, we've got a total of 280 kilograms of 1.4 millimeters stainless steel and 127 kilograms of 1.8, or a total of 897 pounds of stainless steel. Just an estimate. Now, that's cool, but what does it all sit on? Well, I got right into that. And here's the next piece that's really, really cool. Remember how I said the chassis / frame, the unibody, is 3 pieces stuck together? Well, the 2 most exciting parts of that are what Tesla is dubbing gigacasting. And those are 2 enormous cast aluminum pieces with fins and support bars and such, and they look very, very cool. They are definitely a feat of engineering, and being able to produce those at scale without warping as they cool down, it's pretty neat. And they don't give any specifications on these, so this I did have to estimate. But looking at the front piece and the back piece, as well as the smaller castings that they put on the as risers, I'm estimating those to be about 400 pounds each. This is rough, but I have hefted a lot of cast aluminum in my time. I've loaded up my truck, and I know the general volume, and so I'm guessing we're looking at 800 pounds of cast aluminum for all of those unibody aluminum pieces. Now, what's the third piece? So that's the cabin skeleton piece. It's just a stamped piece of steel, and it's what everything else is clipped, glued, and bolted to. We're going to call that 150 pounds. Again, they don't give specifications, but I feel like that's a fair estimate based on my experience with these sorts of things. It could actually be higher, but we're being conservative. Now, you'll notice there's a large hole in the center of that, and that's where the next interesting piece comes in. Now, this one kind of messes with the total a little bit. We'll get into the scrap value of everything once we've gone through the list, but believe me when I say I was surprised at where all the money comes from, and it is not all of the copper that you think is in this thing. Well, that I think. I'm probably the only person who actually thinks about this, but it's not the copper. Now, that big hole is for the battery. Now, this is similar to the Model Y, where the battery is a structural, what do they call it? The structural pack from the Model Y. So it's not just a battery dropped into a little cubby hole somewhere. This is a solid chunk of steel packed with batteries with like lids, and it's an important part of the strength of the total unit. And it's heavy. It's really heavy. I was surprised. 1,590 pounds total for this slab of lithium. And because it's structural, it's what the front seats are bolted directly to. It's right under your feet there. I'm sure it won't catch fire ever. That's a lot of battery, but that's what goes in the big hole in the middle. Now, looking around, moving forward and backward, you probably noticed a few more holes. Those giga castings, well, they have some pretty big gaps. And that is where all of the, what would we call this? It's like the powertrain. This was cool to look at as well, because in the factory, these pieces are assembled on their own and then brought to the remainder of the vehicle. So that is your motor pack as well as your suspension, which is air ride on every corner, which is kind of cool, which makes sense because this truck is a freaking beast, as well as your axles, your sway bars, your control arms, and your steering rack. Now this part is actually pretty cool the way it's constructed. Looking at all the different pieces, it appears to be cast aluminum for basically all of them, except for the parts that simply don't work mechanically in cast aluminum. And that's one of the things that impressed me the most. Steel is definitely cheaper, but this is not a vehicle that is built with cost efficiency in mind. This vehicle is unilaterally created to save as much weight as possible while still being at least as strong or stronger than any other vehicle on the market. And after watching those crash tests, well, I wouldn't want to have to fix one because it looks like you're pretty much going to destroy the whole truck if you hit anything. But as far as the safety of the passengers, you'll be fine. It's incredible. It's very, very strong. But we're getting off track here. Point being, there are some pieces in those drivetrain sections that have to be steel. Things like different sections of the suspension, which are not traditional springs. They're air ride. But the brake rotors, the sway bars, those sorts of things. There's really no way to get around them. Sway bars are built to a certain like tension and return kind of structure. It's just the way it works. So as far as estimations, we're talking about, I'm saying 50 pounds a piece for those air ride suspension. Axles are probably two of them at 40 pounds a piece. Sway bars, again, 40 pounds a piece times two. And the steering rack. So this is all strictly drive-by-wire. There's no steering column connecting the steering wheel to the rest of the stuff. It's all electronically connected. So that, again, saves on a lot of weight. But it does give us 3 additional motors. 2 in the front and 1 in the back, because this vehicle has a crab walk mode. And the rear wheels turn along with the front wheels when you're making a turn. So its turning radius is pretty tight, despite the fact that it is enormous. And then your control arms and all the other stuff are aluminum. So steering rack, 70 pounds aluminum, control arms, 20 pounds aluminum, and we've got 3 small motors, which are going to be about 10 pounds, $10 each. They're about 10 pounds, so $5 worth of copper in each. That's $15 worth of copper. So, you know what? We'll hop right into it. The motors. So this is the part that I thought would make a big difference to how much this is worth in scrapping, because they're large motors and they have copper in them, and copper is scrapper's gold and it's money and everybody loves it, right? Now, I was doing these estimations based on all of the guides for a 3-motor trim level, the 2 in the front and the 1 in the rear. You can get one with 2, I think they do them in 1, 2, 3, or 4, but not all of them are available right now. But it seems like the flagship model that they are pushing out as the baseline is 3 motors, and it costs about $100,000. So that's what we are comparing here, the 3-motor build. And for that, well, those motors, you know what they look like to me? They look a lot like a traditional transmission. And I'm not saying they're anything like one, but in terms of volume and therefore scrap value, I look at that and I see 150 pounds. Pretty much all cast aluminum, and you're gonna pull $20 or $30 worth of copper out of a motor roughly that size. They're surprisingly efficient on the amount of copper that they use. So it's not as much as I thought, but we're talking about 150 times 3, so 450 pounds of cast aluminum, and an additional, let's say, $60 total in copper. Doesn't seem like that much, and that's what I was kind of getting at. The value is not in the copper. Which, moving forward to the wiring. The wiring in a typical car will be between 50 and 70 pounds. It's more than you think, which is, if you're not being super crazy, I've spoken to people who have scrapped cars, and they estimate about $100 worth of wire coming out of each car. Now, in my research, I found that these actually use less wiring than traditional vehicles and not more, partially to save on weight, but it's because they have distribution controllers for pretty much everything. So there's only a few wires going here and there, and most of it is handled in like solid circuitry. So it uses almost 70% less copper than a traditional vehicle, which is great. But if you look at those distribution controllers, they are heavily laden with thick copper bus bars, which is good for us as scrappers. So without actually being able to take them all apart, we are going to just average that out to being the same amount of copper wiring if you combine the wiring and the bus bars. It's my thought experiment, and that's how we're going to run it. I would love the opportunity to pick one of these things apart and find out where exactly I went wrong. But that's where we're going from right now. In addition, those distro controllers give us a bunch of aluminum heat sinks, which don't usually weigh a lot because they're mostly empty space, so we're going to say it's 10 pounds of aluminum heat sinks, conservatively. A conservative 10 pounds. That's all of the major components. We've pretty much finished the breakdown. We will add the 4 aluminum 20-inch wheels. A set of aluminum wheels generally gets $80 Canadian. It's down a little bit, but that's typical. I'm disappointed too, but that's just what the market is giving right now. So, other than that, we've pretty much just got the motorized tonneau cover, which is a small $5 motor, and we'll guess that all of those slats are aluminum. And they're painted and dirty, so it's going to be about $10 worth of aluminum. And the rest of it, you've got the seats, the interior, the screens and such, those don't have any scrap value. They're all fabrics and plastic. And then the trunk, the tailgate, the bed, that's the word, the bed. In the initial images and videos and the big reveal a couple years back, it was shown that that was all stainless steel as well. That is no longer the case. The entire bed is just one big plastic tub inserted into the whole thing. The frame rails, the attachment points, not frame rails, you know what I mean. It's just a big old chunk of plastic. So that doesn't have any scrap value at my scrapyard. You can recycle plastic for money in some places, but we're looking at the metal. So we add all that up, and we're about not quite 2,000 pounds shy of the total 6,800 pounds of the Cybertruck. And 2,000 pounds for the biggest piece of glass in the auto industry, as well as a bunch of other pieces of glass, as well as a giant roof glass, because that back roof is not stainless. It's just 2 giant pieces of glass, and then all of the plastics, the interior, the seats, the screens, the inserts, the plastic on the outside of the rims. I think that's a fair estimate. In fact, I might have needed to be a little more conservative, because that glass is not going to be lightweight. But that gives us our totals. So, this is the part that really surprised me. Let's start with the stainless steel. That one's pretty straightforward. If we've got 900 pounds of what we're selling as 304 stainless steel, at 50 cents a pound, that's going to give us $450, which is pretty decent. That's what you get for just putting holes in the gas tank and dropping a car off, the way it is. So we're already well ahead. But moving on, cast aluminum. Let's bring it down a little bit. It's not 400 pounds for both of them. We'll say 300 pounds for the one that doesn't have the additional wings. So 700 pounds plus 90 pounds plus 10 pounds plus 450 pounds for all of the motor casings. We're talking about 1,250 pounds. Cast aluminum, 70 cents a pound, $875. Almost $1,000 for the aluminum. We're making money. Now keep in mind, all of these numbers are in Canadian dollars. I'm up here in the frozen north, you can tell by my marshmallow suit. So, Canadian dollars, and I'll share the totals translated at the end. So, tin shred. Not too much. We have 200 pounds for all of the suspension bits, 160, 150, I forget where that came at, for roughly 500 pounds of steel. So at 10 cents a pound, 50 bucks. Wiring, we're just calling it a flat $100. That's the wire plus the bus bars, the rims, 80 bucks, and the copper from the motors. Pulled them all out of all the little ones, and we got about $80 worth of copper. So the total in Canadian dollars with all of those components is 1,635 bucks. That's an expensive pile of scrap steel. But there's one giant component which we need to consider. Now this one is a little weird because up in Canada I don't have access to a scrapyard which will buy lithium batteries. So I had to look these things up. My most recent estimates, some scrapyards will pay you 50 cents a pound for lithium batteries, and some will pay as high as $1.30 a pound. So when we're talking about a 1,500 pound battery at 50 cents a pound, translated into Canadian, that's $1,054, and as high as $2,742 in Canadian. That's an expensive battery. That's insane, and way more than I thought. So Canadian scrapyards, start buying laptop batteries because you're missing out on a huge industry. They'll probably knock you down for oversized or some such. I haven't literally done this, so it's hard to say exactly what you're going to get, which is why the range for Americans, expressed in Canadian dollars for some idiotic reason, with the battery, you can expect from $2,700 to $4,400 from scrapping a Tesla Cybertruck. That's insane. Certainly not something we'd care to think about on a $100,000 truck, but you gotta respect the engineering behind it, and when you consider the cost of materials, just the raw materials, to say nothing of all of the research and design and engineering and everything that went into making these, like, this is a exquisite piece of engineering with some very valuable materials going into it. I don't think the profit margin is that great on this stupid thing. Now, he probably shouldn't have promised he could do it for 30 or 40 or 60 grand or whatever it was a couple of years ago. But still, I hope I don't see one crashed. But if you do crash it, at least the absolute bare minimum value is way higher than on any other vehicle. This was fun. This was just a thought experiment. It occurred to me. I thought it was interesting, and I hope you found it interesting. So if you did, interact with this video. I'd love to read your comments and your suggestions, but like and share, and I'll see you on the next one. Leave it better than you found it, and keep doing the thing.